All right, I think we're gonna get started with the four people who are on the call, myself and three others. If you want to unmute yourself, because we have such a small group, it's pretty interesting to get to know who's on the call with us. And I apologize for trying to get started last time, but I guess it goes with the presentation. Just sometimes mistakes will happen, and somebody ended up hacking our Zoom call. So Rachel, if you want to get started and just introduce yourself to the group and how you found side by side and maybe some of your experience with real estate.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks for redoing the call, Scott. I'm sure that was not your plan for this evening. So
No.
I that was not great, but I actually am kind of thankful to know that things like that can happen. So it's good you just closed down the room right away, because I think in the moment we might be panicking and not sure what to do. So it's good that you just closed down the room right away.
Yeah, appreciate that.
So yeah. So my name's Rachel, so I know it's Scott, and then I'm guessing that's your brother Drew there. On the other person on the call, is that correct?
I'm not sure. We've had another Drew join us in the last few meetings, so it might be a different one.
Sure. So I will connect. So I'm actually in a storage unit. Hi. So I'm actually a friend of mine is moving out of state, so we're just bringing some stuff to the storage unit. So yeah, I've known you guys for about a year now, and I got connected with you guys through Alyssa.
Great. Drew, you want to go next?
Sure. So basically got connected to this through Alyssa, and I found her on BiggerPockets. So no real estate experience at the moment outside of just buying my own house, but getting ready to move to the Twin Cities soon, and something I've been interested in and just wanted to try and learn more about real estate investing. And I guess I'm looking at it more from the flipping side of things, but that's just trying to learn more before I'd start sinking some money into it.
Good thinking. Yusuf?
Yes. So I'm similar to Drew. I am, a homeowner, and I am interested in becoming a real estate investor, whether it's flipping out houses or becoming a landlord. And so currently, I only own one house. So hopefully, the more information I get, the more knowledgeable I become, and then taking those concrete steps, I would like at least 2021.
Good. Aaron?
Hi, I just hopped on. What are we doing?
Awesome. Sorry, we're just introducing ourselves. It's a small group because the last Zoom link was hacked, so I had to shut it down. So we probably lost quite a few people in the transition.
So I'm Aaron. I guess I recently relocated to, currently transition time in Iowa, but I'm moving to the Twin Cities, and we'll be renting from a client of Scott and Drew's, and for a few months, and then with the goal of my wife and I finding our own duplex, and starting our landlord and real estate investment journey. So
sweet. Glad to have you. Welcome back, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Alex, I know you just jumped on, but we're just going to get started so that we don't push. I usually try to schedule this for an hour, and I'm going to share my screen now. But the cool thing about this presentation is there's so many people trying to teach you what to do. Hopefully, in my experience, I can teach you what not to do. And there will be mistakes along the way. So there's a lot of gurus out there that can present a rosy picture of what real estate investing looks like, because you always want to show your successes. And I get caught up in it too. It's real estate is fantastic, but there are some pitfalls to it as you're investing. And I want to show you that not everybody gets through this thing scotch-free without any issues. So hopefully through my mistakes, you can learn from them too. And I'm going to present a wide variety of ways you can get tripped up. And hopefully it's entertaining too. I usually do this one with a beer in hand because it's not easy talking about some of your pitfalls. But mistakes made, and oftentimes we don't get started because we're afraid of the mistakes we're gonna make along the way. But as you're trying something new, it's understandable that you're pushing your ceiling of complexity. You've never done this before, so to think you're gonna do it perfectly right out of the gates and every single time is just unrealistic. So hopefully through this presentation you can see that it's just real to mess up a little bit. And Einstein said the person who never made a mistake never tried anything new, and that goes along with what I just said. Overview, I'm just going to show you where we sucked it up a little bit. And this is our team, and we've got an intern, our creative operation or manager, who's up in the right corner. So she does a lot of our marketing and content creation. Alyssa Strom on the bottom left is an awesome realtor, and she's fantastic with marketing. And then Drew and Garrett are in the middle, who are our property investing and property leasing and rental experts. They've worked for property management companies in the past and have rented out hundreds of units. So they do understand what it's like to be a good property manager, and they've also bought properties themselves and help other clients build their portfolios. Then we're adding somebody to the team in the bottom right corner, and Drew, you might like this. She's a local remodeler and flipper. In the last 2 years, she's done 6 big deals, and she's joining our team as a full-time realtor too, bringing her skills to the table. But I'm going to leave her name for when we officially launch her in January 1st. Side-by-Side Realty truly believes that you can achieve lifestyle and financial freedom through real estate. And it's something that we do ourselves, and it's something that we want to help teach clients. And we believe that you don't have to be rich to invest in real estate, as we want to look at real estate from an approachable perspective. As there's a ton of programs out there, there's a ton of strategies that allows you to buy real estate with not a ton of money out of pocket, because not everybody has a whole lot of cash to get in the game, and you don't need it. And so hopefully through learning from Side by Side, you can learn the strategies on how to invest in real estate without having a ton of money. The reasons why you invest in real estate: cash flow. Obviously, we're always looking for the passive income. And if you don't have cash flow, I would advise on really understanding your strategy and why you're investing in real estate. And there's ways of investing in real estate without generating too much cash flow, but you definitely know what you're doing. Equity, something that we talk about a lot is sweat equity, so forced equity. So remodeling a property would be considered forced equity or sweat equity. You're increasing the value quickly by adding value, or you're increasing the property price quickly by adding value to it. Appreciation. Some people invest in real estate because they hope for appreciation, and appreciation is great, but I would not bank on it. Make sure your investment's cash flowing, and hopefully it appreciates over time. And historically, real estate does that, but there's no guarantee, like we saw in the crash. Depreciation, it's about all I'm going to say about that, because there are tax benefits to owning real estate, but I'm not a tax advisor, so I would definitely talk to your local tax advisor about those things. And leverage is my favorite. I was a lender for 2 years, so I have a strong understanding of the financing side, but there's so much power in just leveraging real estate from an equity or appreciation standpoint. And I did a talk last week on creative financing and finding money, and leverage is one of the ways to do that. So let's get started. So for you flippers out there, this is a really fun deal to go through. On paper, it was perfect. And if you've spent any time on Bigger Pockets or heard Brendan Turner talk about the BUR strategy, this was an awesome BUR strategy, again, on paper. So in just high level, what a BUR strategy is when you purchase a property, so you buy, you renovate, so you're forcing that equity into the property. It's going up in value because of the renovations. And then you actually refi the home out of most of the time when you're purchasing it, you're using a hard money lender or a really expensive money to buy the home and do the remodels. And then you're going to want to refi it out into a 30-year fixed. And so you're using the money or the equity in the home that you forced into it. So now the home's worth more than what you bought it for. And you're refining out of that hard money loan into a long-term 30-year fixed loan, which is usually conventional or commercial, depending on how you slice it. And then you rent it out. And the whole goal is to bring zero cash out of pocket because you used a hard money lender and then you used a refi or a conventional lender on top of that to pull the money out. So you never actually use your own money. You're using the equity that you forced into the home. So in this case, we found a property that we purchased for $70,000 and the loan type was to hard money lender. So he's a local investor in town who takes his 401k money and he invests in other real estate investors around town, making a nice return on his money. Because the reality is when a hard money lender lends to you, they're lending on a short-term basis. 4, 5, 6 months, it's high interest rate. There's some points up front that you're paying for the money. Because the reality is they're taking a risk on you for that short period of time. And hopefully you're out of their money pretty quick. So hard money lender, renovation costs. So when you're building out a BUR strategy, you want to purchase the property, but you're also going to want to come to the table with a scope of work on what you're going to do to the home to renovate it. And this scope of work is usually done by a general contractor, or if you've got some experience, you can put together a scope of work. What does it cost to remodel the kitchen? What does it cost to add another bedroom, add some square footage to the home? And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to increase that home's value through that scope of work, the work you're going to do to represent a true ARV is what it's called, but it's an after repaired value. So the scope of work is going to reflect what other homes in the area are selling for in similar fashion when the property is done for. So that after repaired value. And then so in this case, our all-in cost was $70,000 to purchase the property. And then we're going to have the renovation cost of $65,000. So the hard money lender was going to give us the $135,000 that we needed to purchase the property and do the renovations. He was willing to go up to $150,000. So oftentimes hard money lenders will do a percentage of the ARV. And in this case, it was 70% of the $215,000, what the house was going to be worth after we were done. And so he was going to loan up to $150,000. So it was only going to cost us $135,000. He was willing to do $150,000 to us. We have plenty of room for margin and error. And so when we were all said and done, we had a property that was worth $215,000 that we can refi and get $161,000 back because most conventional lenders will lend 75% of that ARV. Hard money lender, 70%, conventional lender, 75%. So that extra 5% can oftentimes cover any of the costs added to doing the loan process because there's origination fees and there's fees involved. So for the most part, if you're doing it right, the left-hand column, this is no money out of pocket. You're just using the home's equity to purchase this property. What actually happened was on the right. Purchased property for 70 grand, got that down. Loan, hard money lender, great. Renovation, whoops. So it was supposed to be a $65,000 renovation, but it ended up being $140,000. There's a number of reasons why this happened, and I'll talk about them in the next slide, but this is a huge mistake. And there should be another zero. Sorry about that. But ARV is 215 still. And so our all-in cost was $210,000. So it was more than double the cost for renovations. And then on top of that, we held this property for 9 months. We were supposed to be done in 3. So you're thinking you're carrying costs with your hard money lender, interest rate, the interest is so high. So you're carrying that for more months than you wanted to. But we still had to hold on. We could not foreclose on this property. We had to hold on to it. And so we did the refi anyways. And so we had to come out of pocket with almost $50,000 to make this deal work. Again, on paper, it was beautiful. When it all said and done, we lost 50 grand trying to do it. I say we lost it. we still have the home. It's renting out for a decent cash flow, but at the time we didn't have $50,000 to sock away into a single family investment. So what really happened? Inexperience. We had myself and two partners. My twin brother was the other partner. And then we had one of my best friends as our contractor, and the four of us, we've never really done a flip to this magnitude before. And so for us to go in and create a scope of work, one of the biggest things that we did on this house specifically, if you see it to the picture to the left, we ripped the porch off. That wasn't smart because it was a 3 seasons porch, and 3 seasons porch, they carry more value than just an open air porch like the one you see to the right. And B, it exposed our foundation, and the city wasn't caught up on us pulling our permits. So when the city inspector drove by and he saw that we had our project was in shambles, he assumed that we weren't pulling our permits, and he came down on us pretty hard. What we really should have done was just keep the 3 season porch intact and remodel it in place. This mistake cost us about $18,000 in unforeseen expenses. So if you go through is a lack of experience, lack of focus throughout the project. Okay, we're buy and hold investors. What we should have done is just looked at this property and figured, okay, how do we get this property to a point where we can rent it out after the remodel? But halfway through the project, we decided, hey, maybe we were gonna flip it. Let's make a quick cash. Let's use that cash for something else. I've never flipped a property before. We're buy and hold investors. What we should have done is just approach this home and how we can buy and hold it. So lack of focus. Also, we thought maybe we would make it into an Airbnb after we refied it. We've never done an Airbnb at the time. We're buy and hold investors. We should just focused on our numbers to rent it out. Contractor issues. Like I said, we went into this deal with one of my best friends. That went south. So Drew unfortunately had to let him go. And then we had another contractor join in the project halfway through. The problem with that is we needed a new contractor so bad we were willing to take on anybody. We didn't do what we normally do with vetting out our vendors. We thought he was going to save the day, when it turned out he was kind of crooked and walked off the job a month sooner than we had hoped, and completely left Minneapolis. Some contractors were hard to find. We thought we were going to be, after our contractor walked out of the job, we were going to GC the job ourselves. We've never known how to be a GC before. So finding subs to do the work like plumbing, electrical wasn't something we were prepared for. And so we lost a lot of time doing that. We're real estate investors, we own a realty company. This home actually put us on the brink of foreclosure because we were pushing our time frame. Our hard money lender was having to extend his hard money lending towards us. And if at some point he said, hey guys, I need my money, we didn't have the money to give him, nor did we have a finished project. So luckily the hard money lender was willing to work with us to extend the time frame out. Your relationships get strained. This was at the time a new partnership between my twin brother and Garrett Gordon, who was also on our team. And it was stressful. And there was at one point in this project that Drew called me he was laying down in the basement of this house, and he called me and said, hey, I want to sell everything. I'm so overwhelmed. I don't even know why we're doing this real estate thing. I'm just going to want to get rid of it all. And so it does strain your relationships and you do get discouraged. So this isn't the only remodel we've done, but it is definitely the only remodel that we've done to this magnitude. And I would do another remodel this big in the future, but there's a lot of things I would definitely get squared away before going into the project, and not just going in and hoping for the best. So moving forward, is the great thing about that project is the three partners that you see up on top are myself, Drew, and Garrett Gordon. And even though that was the first time we partnered on a deal, the remodel, it because there's so many things that went wrong, and you can see somebody's true characters when you have so many issues to face. And all of us remained calm. We were respectful to each other. We did the right thing every time the right thing rises. We never blamed each other. So when you can see each other in that kind of light during a really tough situation, you figured you can go into any deal together and pretty much be successful. So we continue to invest together. And the top three is a package of 3 duplexes. And we were using commercial financing to purchase these duplexes, and they were purchased off market. The day before we closed, our commercial lender gave me a call and said, yeah, we don't really have the appetite to lend to this project, even though he had pre-approved me. We're going to cut your down payment, and we're gonna require, instead of 20% you have to bring to the table, we're gonna require you to bring 25% to the table. So on a $680,000 purchase, another 5% is a ton of money, and we didn't have it. And so a day before closing, we were told that we had to bring an extra 5% to the table. Not good. We had to scramble. We had to find money from elsewhere. What can happen? It's not like we're dealing with conventional financing, and we're dealing with a bank who's willing to loan you almost $1 million on a couple of properties. They pretty much can call the shots. And so lending terms changed the day before we were supposed to close. Once we finally did close, which was about 3 weeks after that phone call, I got a call from the city of Minneapolis saying we need to immediately stop what we were doing. And I'm like, what? To the inspector. It was the city of Minneapolis inspector. And he said, apparently somebody is trying to rent these duplexes out. I was like, yes, we own them. My name is Scott. We are trying to rent them out. They are investment properties. They said you need to stop because they're on the vacant property list. So apparently the owner prior to us did not keep up with his rental license with the city of Minneapolis, and nor did he keep up on their work orders that they required. And so they placed all these properties on the vacant property list. I didn't know that. Nobody knew that before we closed on the home. So in a hurry scramble, we had to work with the city to complete all of their work orders to get these properties up to code so that we can rent them out. We in the duplex all the way to the left. So there's one thing that we talk about with owning real estate is the stabilization period. So when you take over the ownership of a home, usually 9 times out of 10, the prior seller probably wasn't doing a great job managing his investments. He's selling because he doesn't like his renter's situation anymore. He's selling because it's just been a headache and he's tired of the home. He's selling because he's got so much deferred maintenance just stacking up that he doesn't want to deal with anymore. So there's a lot of things that can come with owning a new rental property that you have to do to stabilize it, to get it to the point where it's finally making you money, because the prior owner just didn't treat it so well. In this case, the duplex to the left, the upstairs tenant, well, the lease that we got from the owner said there was only 2 people living there, but when it was all said and done, there was about 8 people living there. That was taxing on the utilities. That made it very difficult when they were moving out. The home was beat up because there were so many people living there. It just wasn't what we signed up for. In addition, I would definitely suggest watching your utilities usage. So oftentimes if there's you've got a utility bills, let's just call it the city sewer and trash, and every single month it costs you $115 roughly to pay for those utilities. And all of a sudden it spikes to $300. That's a red flag. So I would watch your utility bills pretty closely, because that's what can happen in one of these units, is because there are so many people living there, there's huge spikes in the utility costs. Oftentimes they would throw stuff into the garbage that shouldn't be in the garbage, and now I'm having to pay fines from the city. And then when they're not great renters, pushing them and forcing them to pay those fines is very difficult. So costs can add up just with dealing properties that you acquire from other owners who were pretty gnarly at it. Another issue that happened is Section 8 program is fantastic if you have the right Section 8 tenants and you're dealing with a really good caseworker over there. We had a case where Section 8 had delayed their payments by 3 months, so we were carrying 3-month back rent with Section 8. We finally got things squared away, but I would suggest having reserves in your bank account so that if you do end up dealing with a situation like this where you're not getting rent payments right away, you can front the mortgage for a little while. In addition, we do have a few units in our portfolio, and we do turn over quite a few units in the year. We had one instance where we had renters move out, and then we didn't get the property up to speed before the next renters moved in. It was a crazy summer. I had my son at the time. He was born in September, and the tenants were moving in October 1st, and there was just the unit needed to be painted. There's some railings that need to be fixed, just normal wear and tear on a duplex. And so we let the tenants move in early, and then we worked with them to cover or complete the list of items after they moved in. I would not suggest that. Don't let a tenant move in if you have a list of work orders that you need to get completed. And we were just being nice. They were in between their living situation, but I would definitely have your place ready to go by the time the person's moving in. It'll save you a ton of pain and heartache. So that's the duplex package that we purchased. That's me in the bottom picture, signing paperwork, all happy, not realizing that we were gonna be walking into a shitstorm. All said and done, all these duplexes are stabilized now, and we are having really good renters in there, and our rent checks are flowing in, and it has been well worth the time and effort to get them up to speed. Stabilization continues. So this is a single family home in South Minneapolis that we turned into an Airbnb. This was also purchased a year ago when I was having my son. And so things were pretty chaotic. And oftentimes we think, okay, we're going to buy an investment property and you're just going to walk right in and it's going to start making you money. Does not work that way. And so we pride ourselves on not having vacancy in our homes. In this case, this is a huge exception. So we purchased it to be an Airbnb. That was why we bought it. If you are buying into the Airbnb business model, I would definitely purchase the home off the numbers as if you were to conventionally rent it out. And then if Airbnb is your goal, let it be a bonus on top of that. So when you're running your numbers, say, okay, if Airbnb just went away, their IPO dropped and the company went bankrupt, can I rent this bad boy out just straight conventional rent and make money? And if you can, and then you want to do Airbnb, then I would suggest doing Airbnb. In this case, we didn't have the time to stage it and design it and make it ready for Airbnb. So we took a couple months in vacancy and then finally put in a long-term renter to get through last winter. And these renters wanted to stay for 6 to 8 months. But after about 2 to 3 months of living there, they realized it was just too small for them and they decided they wanted to move out. And of course we let them. We weren't going to hold them to staying in their property. That's definitely something I would suggest is sticking to your lease. For us, we had other reasons. So we really wanted to get it on Airbnb. So the long-term tenants move out, and then we have our designers go in and they make it look gorgeous. But unfortunately, something that happened was COVID in March. So they finished their remodel just in time for April 1st to happen, and Airbnb and hospitality world just plummeted. So not only were we carrying a couple of months of vacancy because we just mismanaged our long-term tenant, we're now carrying 2 months of vacancy to try to weather the COVID storm. Eventually, the hospitality and Airbnb business picked back up, and now I've been 95% occupied since July 1st, which has been a huge blessing. But again, we don't like to carry vacancy. It costs money out of pocket. We're paying mortgage, we're paying utilities without anybody living there. So I would definitely have a plan of how you're going to generate income right away on these properties. And if you're going to delay it, know why you're delaying it. Airbnb, a little bit about Airbnb. We have 2 single family homes that are on Airbnb right now and doing very well, but it didn't start off that way. This we call the Butternut. It's over in St. Paul, and Drew and I found it off market, really good price. I'm inside the Butternut painting, and I hear a podcast from Bigger Pockets where a gal talks about how she rents her properties on Airbnb. I think she's in Boulder, Colorado. And after that 45-minute podcast, I go, "Hey Drew, we're gonna try Airbnb. We're gonna try it. I don't even know how to do this. I've never been in the hospitality business. I've never been a server at a restaurant or worked at a hotel. I know nothing about this, but we're still gonna try it." My wife and I, after painting it, went around one weekend and grabbed a bunch of furniture at garage sales and staged her. We have photos uploaded. A photographer took the photos, so I feel really good about that. And then we started having people stay there. And there's just so much that goes into making sure somebody has a 5-star stay. And so my opening reviews weren't that great. I had some 3 and under star reviews on an Airbnb, and that's actually detrimental to your business. So Airbnb, the number one thing you should focus on when you have an Airbnb property is maintaining those 5-star reviews. That is your entire business. And so because I had 3-star reviews, it took me almost 6 months to get back up to Superhost because it was so challenging to offset some of those bad reviews. And they weren't even, it's not like the place was dirty or disgusting. It was just things that I forgot to do. Poor communication in where the Wi-Fi password was, or an extra set of sheets I should have had there if somebody was trying to stay on the futon. There's just like little things that you forget about. One time I had a miscommunication with my cleaners. This still happens because nobody's perfect. And when you have many guests staying there, like sometimes your communication will be off with your cleaners or your guests, and when a guest arrives and the property isn't turned over and ready for them, you're going to get a poor review. And that actually happened 2 weeks ago. And I would suggest, if you're going to manage Airbnb and that happens to you, do everything you can to take care of that guest, because you've promised them a really nice place to stay and that wasn't given to them. So what I did with that guest, when their property wasn't, or their home wasn't ready for them, I sent them over to the local hotel and gave her a confirmation number for her 3-night stay. Yes, I probably lost money on that transaction, but in the long run, it was the right thing to do. One time I accidentally clicked breakfast on my Airbnb listing. And so I had a couple text me and said, "Hey, where's my breakfast?" I'm like, "What breakfast?" And then I looked at my listing, and turns out the check mark next to breakfast was checked. And I was like, "Oh, crap." And so I gave them money to go eat breakfast at the local diner. It wasn't a huge situation, but I was definitely for sure going to read through my listing and make sure I knew what I was doing. One more thing about this place is it was purchased using commercial financing. And so when you purchase using commercial versus conventional, commercial, you have to pay your own taxes and your own insurance outside of the mortgage. In a conventional purchase, you can wrap up your taxes and insurance into the mortgage payment. In this case, everything was outside because I actually used a commercial loan to purchase this house. And I totally forgot to pay my homeowner's insurance for an entire year. I got a message from my loan officer who verifies that there is actually insurance on the home that they're lending on. And he said, "Hey, Scott, you didn't pay your homeowner's insurance." I'm like, "Huh, that's funny." I reached out to my homeowner's my agent, and he said, "Yeah, you haven't been paying for an entire year." Whoops. Not that I wanted to go without homeowner's insurance, not that I couldn't afford it. I just completely forgot. So there's things that when you're going a little faster and you're trying new things, this was my first time using commercial lending. You'll oversee some stuff. So do your due diligence, but also give yourself some grace that the house didn't burn down in that year. I'm very lucky and blessed that happened, but I'm not going to beat myself up over it because you just don't know what you don't know. Self-managing homes, self-managing your own rental properties is challenging because there's a lot at work. And I would say if you only have a few, definitely self-manage so that you understand the challenges, you get used to screening tenants. And then if you want to use a property manager, you know what it takes to manage that home. In this case, this is a single family home in North Minneapolis. And 2 years ago, I ran into some issues with the Minneapolis rental license inspector, and she called out a couple of items on here with related to the stucco or the exterior of the home. And she called it out in October, and then November hit, and you can't work on the exterior during the winter. So I figured she would give me an extension. I figured, don't assume stuff because it'll nip you in the butt. So all winter long, I thought I had an extension to my rental license. I thought I didn't have to do any of the work orders they requested because it was on the exterior of the home. And then this spring, I get $1,000 assessment on the place saying I didn't have my rental license up to speed and I didn't have my work orders completed. Again, $1,000 fee for assuming something. So I would definitely work with your city inspectors to make sure your homes are certified and ready to rent. Sometimes the house has overgrowth near the alleyway, and I don't have a landscaper taking care of this home. It's actually the renter who does the yard maintenance, and sometimes they don't do an awesome job because it's not their place, and they don't take care of it as good as you would if you were the homeowner. And the city has charged me for some tree trimmings in the back, and I'm not gonna, the last one is definitely screen your tenants well, and eventually you have enough of a process and go off that process to make sure you're always putting tenants that you like and you feel comfortable with in your units. And this time we went against our gut feeling on a renter, and it turned out he had some history with meth and brought that history with him into the home. He didn't do any of the meth in the home. It's just he was a roommate of another friend of ours, and we had to end up kicking him out. So definitely do your screening and your due diligence. So these are two duplex, or the top duplex I purchased with my wife, and the bottom one I purchased with my twin brother. And both have some issues that I wish we would have caught during the inspection. And I would always suggest doing an inspection on your investment properties. The top property I bought with my wife about 3 years ago, and I had an inspection. And it's funny, my dad loves coming through our properties and looking at them. And at the time he lived in Chicago. And so when I showed him, after we bought this, I was showing him around, and he's in the basement and he looks up at the joists and he goes, "Scott, was there a fire in this house?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, there was two." He's like, "There was two fires in this house, and you can see that the home actually has been rebuilt over time, and the floor joists in the basement are all charred because there had been fires in there. Luckily, there's sister joists, and they reworked the foundation, but because the home's foundation was pretty shoddy, for many years, the home started to do some settling, and our upstairs tenant calls it the fun house because as they walk from their bathroom, their bedroom to their bathroom, it's a little cockeyed. Luckily, we've shored it up. I've had a contractor go through and make sure the foundation is in great shape. But looking back now, I wish I would have seen some of the red flags that obviously the basement was presenting. So I did have an inspection. I was just too excited about the home to worry about some of the issues. I don't suggest that. The bottom duplex every spring gets a ton of water in the basement. You can fix stuff like that through grading, but at the time we look back, and this was the first duplex we ever purchased, you can easily check to see if there's some staining in the basement from past water history. And at the time when we were buying it, it was a dry season. It wasn't the spring. The basement wasn't actively wet, but looking back, you can tell on some of the foundation pieces and some of they had drywall down there. You can tell the drywall was saggy in some places, so it does get water. So definitely look at your inspection, talk to your realtor, talk to your inspector to help point out some of the red flags when purchasing a home, because even I made mistakes in that area. So random thoughts as we close it out a little bit. Utility transfers, it takes time to transfer utilities over. Well, if you're buying into a new city, so this past summer, we bought a sixplex up in Hill City, Minnesota, a town of 560 people, about 2 hours north. It takes time to transfer the utilities of that sixplex into your name. So account for the time that it takes to just stabilize a home and get utilities set up and in the books. Second mortgage versus a HELOC. So in my creative financing conversation, I discussed the difference between a HELOC and a second mortgage. A HELOC is basically a revolving line of credit that you can use kind of like a bank account, and a second mortgage is pretty fixed. You have to use all the money. So if you want to use these programs, and I'm not going to dive into the details a lot, but there's ways of leveraging these programs into buying more property. Snow removal and yard maintenance. At some point, you just cannot cut enough grasses in the summer if you're a homeowner and landlord. When we were first investing, I think in the first 2 to 3 years, I loaded up my lawnmower in the back of my SUV and cut a lot of our lawns. At some point, I don't suggest doing that. There's an app called Lawn Love that is really cheap for what you get. And you don't want to spend your nice summers in Minnesota cutting grasses. I would suggest that be the first thing you give up as you start to add more properties to your portfolio. Expense tracking, track your receipts, find an app. There's a ton of them out there, or just create a Google Drive and just take a picture of your receipts so that when it comes time at the end of the year, it's an easy download for your tax accountant to figure out your expenses and for you to figure out your expenses. So it's important to be up to par with the IRS. Definitely track your expenses so you can. So I know I presented a lot and it was pretty heavy. And if you've been on a call before, you've probably heard this story, but back in 2012, I graduated college and I decided I was going to move to Denver like all good college graduates at the time. And I get to Denver and I'm looking for a place to rent. So I pull up in front of a house and behind me pulls up a flat black 4Runner, like really like kind of jacked up a little bit with stickers all over the back, just a really cool 4Runner that those Coloradoans drive. Out jumps the landlord, we shake hands and we walk through the property. He shows us around and then we're in the front yard and he goes, "Hey guys, I got to run. If you really like it, text me or email me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can." Jumps in his 4Runner and drives away. And I look at it and I'm like, I want to be that guy. And what I imagined is he was going to pick up his kids from school and heading out to the mountains to go camping, or he was loading up his snowboard and heading out to the mountains and going snowboarding, anything but going back to his 9-to-5 job. And what I didn't know at the time is I saw the fact that he had freedom to not go back to the 9-to-5 job, and I related to real estate. Is I put 2 and 2 together as I said, this guy has freedom because he owns real estate. And here I am kid out of college, shouldn't I be excited about starting my corporate job and getting that 401k and W-2 job? And but the reality is I wanted to be this dude that just showed me his home. So what I say about that is as some of these issues arise, know that you're doing it for a bigger reason than just money. Is you want to create a lifestyle for yourself that gives you choice over what you do every single day and doesn't have the same financial constraints as you would as if you didn't own real estate. And it can be a bit hard at times, but it's definitely worth it. And one of our local investors here and a friend of mine, Louis Benedict, says, mistakes are only mistakes if you don't learn from them. So hopefully you can learn from my mistakes as I share them today. I will make more because I'm not done investing in real estate, but I know that I'm definitely going to learn from them too. And so that's how you can connect with us. And I am going to open it for questions and stop sharing. So that's my email, Scott@SideBySideRE, if you have any questions about what I just covered today. Alex, and you guys can unmute yourself. There's only 4 of us on the call. Hopefully next time I won't have somebody try to hack my Zoom meeting, and I can have more people on the call. But if you throw a couple questions in here that I got, oh, thanks, bud. So biggest mistake, and Alex, maybe you can clarify your question here, just so I know.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah. So yeah, I've been working. I'm not sure how caught up here, but I've actually been working with Alyssa. The plan is
Awesome.
hopefully this summer I'll buy my first kind of multifamily.
Congrats, bud.
Thanks. We'll see what happens. You know, it's gotta be consistent. With that said,
Yeah.
I'm definitely looking at leveraging kind of those lower down payments. You know, conventional 5% or 3.5.
Yep.
That way, you know, there's just extra money you use towards like the renovations and kind of have a buffer. With that said, what are some of the things you notice that people kind of mess up when they try to go that route?
It probably the biggest thing is the strategy when using the programs. And if you're working with Kim or Connor Hesh in town here, both of them understand the program so well. Is those programs are not designed for you to use them to build your portfolio. They don't like investors. They're mostly designed for you to live there and offset your mortgage as much as possible, but not to add and buy more property. So the FHA and conventional, you'll have to talk to them about the guidelines. So if you use one before the other one, the second one is hard to come by. So definitely strategizing to use conventional 5% first, if you can get qualified for it, then your FHA second, and then possibly a 15% down. So the strategy on how to use them is very important. I don't see any downfalls to the program specifically. I can't stress enough how powerful it is to use those programs to buy property with little money out of pocket. And that's how I've built my entire portfolio. You move into them, you have a low down payment, like a 3.5 to 5%, live in it for 1.5 to 2 years, build up enough equity, possibly pull money out of it because you have the equity and use it as a down payment on another property. But yeah, using these low down payment programs is fantastic, especially where interest rates are so low right now. You really can't go wrong.
Cool. And then I had kind of just a follow-up to that. So yeah, I remember in your last webinar, you mentioned that you should kind of try and get the conventional first, and then FHA. And then if you go for a third one, do like the 15%.
Yep.
With that said, is there any kind of, with the down payment assistance programs, is there any kind of, does it make it harder to close on a deal, would you say?
Yeah, good question. So some investors or some realtors who represent investors do not like FHA because there's a stigma behind an FHA. FHA requires certain things to be up to par with the property itself. So like it can't have any safety issues, peeling paint, all that kind of stuff. So when you're using an FHA program, it makes it more difficult to convince the seller to sell that home to you, especially in a really competitive market. But with that said, if that's the only program available to you and you only have 3.5% to put down, you got to work within those boundaries. There's other ways of making your offer more competitive if you're worried about them accepting your FHA offer. And Alyssa knows all of those approaches. Does that kind of answer your question?
No, yeah, that does. I was just kind of curious, about.
Yeah, it is what it is. Yeah.
I guess my last question too with that is when you do like a conventional or FHA, usually recommend, you said 18 to 24 months, or could you do it as minimum as 12? I'm not trying to rush anything, but
yeah, you can do it within 12 months. They want to see a year of maturity of you living in the property. And on top of that is a lot of times underwriters want to know your story. So underwriters underwrite you to qualify you for the program or the loan option, and they want to know your story. So if you live in a 1-bedroom unit of a duplex and you used 5% conventional, and you go to try to use a FHA on additional duplex that is a little bit bigger, you can say things like, I'm getting married, I'd love the extra space so that we can move in together, or I'm having a kid, we need an extra space, so the FHA will qualify you for a bigger unit of another duplex. So creating a story on why you need a different living situation is very important for underwriters to qualify you for homes. And so having a year's worth of maturity in your owner occupied home, and then you're looking to buy another duplex, creating that story for yourself so that you can buy another duplex is kind of important.
Okay, great. Thanks. Appreciate it, Scott.
So if you're working from home, that's a big one too, is now all of us are working from home. And if you're in a 1-bedroom, you go, hi, I'm basically doing my job from my house. I need a bigger space. So oftentimes that'll work for the underwriter.
Okay, awesome. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for hanging out with. Is there any other questions?
I've got a couple for you, Scott.
Yeah, Drew.
So I was just wondering, are you guys willing to, in some of these investment properties, kind of give us your thoughts on ARVs for the properties versus kind of what we think as a kind of a point of comparison, so that we can avoid trying to make a mistake of maybe we think it's a better deal than it actually is?
Yeah, definitely. That's your realtor's job, is to make sure they're updating you on the market. So really good question. So an ARV is an after repaired value. So you take a really distressed property and you try to look at, okay, what is that property going to be worth after I renovate it? So as a flipper, what you're doing is you're looking at the neighborhood, you're comparing the home that you have to other homes similar to itself as if it was finished. And so your realtor Alyssa's going to pull comps on what the area is doing based off of the scope of work that you give her. And she's going to advise on whether you should build out the basement. So oftentimes flippers think they're going to get their money out by building out the basement. It's easy. I just throw up some walls, throw up a bathroom, bedroom, some doors, living room, we're good. And it's like, well, not necessarily true. So if you're comping that house against some other place that has square footage that is above ground compared to your below ground is about 60% of the above ground value. So even though you built out your basement and it's beautiful and it's adding the extra square footage, if you're going to comp it against somebody who's mostly above ground square footage, they're not going to be one for one. So you're definitely going to want your realtor to advise on different types of renovations, neighborhoods and types of renovations, like quartz countertops versus granite versus hardwood floors. There isn't a perfect equation to try to figure it out. Is you'll have to definitely, and that's why a lot of flippers, if you're thinking you're going to make money off the first deal, is most flippers tend to lose money on their first couple of deals until they start figuring it out, because there's just stuff you don't know about a market, you don't know, but you try to do as much due diligence as you can up front to try to avoid some of those mistakes.
The other question I had for you is just curious, from your slides, is there anything that you do differently when you're renovating a house for an Airbnb versus for just a regular rental property?
Yeah. an Airbnb likes unique spaces. Luckily, the homes that our first Airbnb we purchased, it was just unique in itself as a very small 1-bedroom place on the edge of a river. So there's not much I had to do with that from a renovation perspective. And then our second one, we had a designer go through and add unique touches. So like a sliding barn door, they staged it well, different types of furniture. From a renovation perspective, is I would say Airbnb a little bit nicer than a general rental, but for the most part is you want to put durable materials in there. The home's going to get abused both ways. A renter doesn't take as good a care of it as if they were a homeowner. And then Airbnb, you just have so much traffic going through. If you're going to allow dogs, at any given moment, you have, in my unit or in my property, we have 7 different guests and anywhere from 2 to 4 guests at a time staying in that home in a month. So there's just a lot of people going in and out of that home. So when you do renovate for both, I would definitely use more durable materials, LVL flooring, a really nice paint, so you're not painting every single time the property turns over. Finding, yeah, just like I said, durable, make sure it lasts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for hanging in there. It was awesome presenting to you, and hopefully you've learned a little bit. And yeah, we're done with our current webinar series, so that's going to close out the year. But I'm currently putting together. Oftentimes, we look at real estate as more of a hobby than a business. I'm putting together a couple of webinars to talk about how to build out a business plan related to your real estate and a life plan, so that you can stay focused on growing your portfolio. So look for that in the next couple months. But it was great hanging out with all of you, and we'll talk to you later.